Well, thank you for joining us for another craft conversations. Do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Michelle Churchill. I'm a fiber artist and I'm living here in Mount Pearl right now. I went to school at the College of the North Atlantic and initially did graphic design and photography. So that led me into photography actually, and I used to rent a studio downtown and develop my own pictures and stuff like that, and then everything went digital. Some years after that I took a course at the Anna Templeton Centre where it led into the fiber arts.
So how did you find it then, moving from photography to fiber arts?
Well, being an artist, I find that I always want to improve. I always want to try different things. I don't want to be stuck in like a niche. So I'm always looking for creative outlets. So I did find it difficult at first because I quit. I'll be honest, it wasn't. Generally when you do rug cooking, you use strips of wool. I just couldn't get into the neck, and I like the creative part of it, but it was one of those things where, you know what, this is nice, but I don't think this is for me, and I actually pushed it aside. And some years later, I just had some time. I decided, well, let's try it again. Tried it again and still didn't like it, and I said, well, I'm gonna have to make this my own. What else can I do? So I discovered ripping up my husband's t-shirts was the best way to get rid of them. So I started doing that, to be honest, because you're supposed to use cotton. So let's get rid of these shirts. And then I said, well, let's use some bigger wools and things like that. That's what I did, and found a new creative outlet for me that I really, really enjoyed, and I just got obsessed with it and just couldn't put it down. And then I went from doing that to like dyeing my own wools and teaching.
So one of the things you mentioned is that you like different creative outlets. And so, I don't know, how does having those different creative outlets, I guess, is it less like the medium itself, more about like the process of creation? Tell me a little bit more about that.
The process of creation for me, it's almost longer than the actual work itself. It's not that I'm never satisfied, but it never leaves me. When I think of a project, it's generally pen and paper, so I start doing with a process like that. But even when I do that, it can take days, sometimes weeks, because I'll wake up, I'll be thinking about it 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can't get it out of my mind. You know, my head is racing with ideas. I have a notepad next to me in bed. Sometimes I'm thinking about it so much, I'm dreaming about stuff, right? Or I'll actually have something created, and I'll get up like 2 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, that's not good, and I'll just haul all the wool out of it, right? Or I'm dyeing something, and she's like, no, I don't like that. And right in the middle of dyeing, I'll just throw it all out and start again. It has to feel right, and there's a whole process to it. And people just think, well, you just draw a picture, or, you know, it's easy, it's just like paint by numbers. And it's just like, you have no idea what it takes to do this, and the amount of time it takes to do it is unreal.
Yeah.
Because once I have an idea finally, and I'm doing it, I take my time, and it's such a process that when I draw the picture and I transfer it onto my linen or my burlap, as primarily linen, then I gotta do a color match, and that's a whole process in itself. And then if I don't have the right colors, then it's dyeing. And this is like my play on the Newfie Gothic type thing. You know, there's this fish. This room is just like for destruction purposes. Like, what can I take out? What are the colors? My wool for dyeing is over there. So it's just a matter of, you know, what can I take out that's in front of me that I can rip up or dye. So basically in here is just a color process. And I started doing something new. This is called rug tufting. So I dyed some wool, and then you use a gun basically. And it turns out kind of like that. When I dye a lot of my wools, I try to go natural, as eco-friendly as I can. So if I'm going to do a picture with grass in it, for example, I will literally go out and pick grass, because there's a way that you can dye it so that the hue will actually stay into the yarn. Or if I'm doing something that has a blue background, then I'll soak it in blueberries. You know, so there's a turmeric, you know, there's a whole different process with that. So I try to keep it as authentic as what I'm doing. And then when I finally get it done and don't haul it out anymore, then it's the whole process of framing it. And so we do our own frames. My husband helps me with it.
How is like creating your own frames? How is that part of it? Because that's really interesting, because I've never done that before, but you know.
Well, again, I want to do something different. My husband helps me with that, obviously, because I do like the tools. I do the sanding and the staining, and he does these shadow boxes for me that I put on my art. So again, it's a piece of it, and they all kind of look a little rustic, so it matches the photo itself as being, you know, rustic and authentic looking. And then I have a piece down there where it has driftwood on it. So that's a matter of just like combing the beach, and that's what I was saying before, like I go out foraging and stuff. It would just seem really weird if I did everything and then went out and bought a frame. It has to look a certain way, and it has to convey what I want to convey. So that's why it's from start to finish.
Yeah, and it's something I found super interesting too, just talking to different artists and just how many different mediums they've tried and how they're always trying more and more and more just to kind of see what's out there. And you know, like that's something you've mentioned. So what does that add to the creative process, trying all those different things out?
Well, you definitely know what you don't like and what you do like, and then what you can put together, but it can come up with ideas that you've never ever thought of before, right? So I mean, when I look at art that I did, or rug cooking even, that I did 10 years ago, is completely different than what I've done now. I was very standardized, you know, like, okay, so let's just do a puffin's head, let's stick it on a pillow. You know, it was just that, there was no other process. So now I'm more into 3D. So, and then I want to add other elements to it, other natural elements. And then that led to me dyeing my own wool. And then going out foraging for like materials that I could use to add to it. You know, so now it's more of a mixed media thing. And now, like I said, I'm trying to do plaster. So it's just like I said, it just evolves.
Absolutely. And it kind of gets to that like age-old question of, I don't know, I've been asked this so many times, like, oh, how long does it take you to make this? And
It's just, it never ends. It's just, like, it can take me, I say a good 3 months just to do something that's maybe 20 by 20. The biggest piece I have there took me 6 months to do. And again, that's the whole process. That's not just me sitting down. And people, I have a life. You know, I have a job that actually pays. So a lot of this stuff I do at night and on the weekends. So you just try to fit it all in. But it's just, and it's tedious. It's anyone that's a rug cooker or works in the fiber arts. It is tedious. It's just a process of, you know, basically doing this for, you know, months on end. You know, I don't even look at it anymore. I go watch the news you know, and do that. It's like no problem.
It's similar. I was talking to a friend yesterday who was like just starting to learn to crochet, and she was saying, oh, you know, I kept zoning out, like losing my train, like so quickly. It just becomes muscle memory, and then you can just do it. But yeah, you're right. Like it just takes so long, and even that lead up process to it.
Once you have it down, it's like that. So, but it's just again a whole process. So when if I go to a show and something, and a customer comes and they'll see a piece of work, they say, oh, I can do that in a weekend. It's like, oh, no, you can't. Tell you that now. Good luck. Here's a kit. Let me know how you feel in a week.
But it also sounds to you like it's like a very like all-enveloping process. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like I started 15, 17 years ago, and And I thought this would be just something neat to do, and it's totally taken over like my life, you know. But I love it. It's totally enveloping.
Yeah. And it's that the ideas process. Is that the part that you find like the most enveloping, or is it enveloping throughout, just like tearing it out, redoing it, or?
Well, that's what drives me nuts. It's not that I'm never satisfied. I always feel I can do better. Next time I can do better. I have to improve on this because I want more and more and more.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't want to do the same old stereotypical, I'm just going to do a dory. In the beginning, it was just so tedious because it is a whole process, like you said. But even the actual rug cooking itself in regards to doing loops and things like that, it can be a way that you can start something, not pay attention, and everything will fall out. And it's just like, okay, well, that's like an hour's worth of work I just did, and it's all gone. Okay, start again. Or you can rip the fabric, you know, or you could have it knotted in a different way, or there's something wrong with the back, or by the time you turn it over, it's a disaster. There's so many, you really have to focus on it, especially when you're just beginning. But it can be such an enjoyable process that once you start it and you finished it, I mean, I guarantee you're going to be proud of what you've done, no matter what it is, right?
So one of the things you wanted to talk a little bit more about too is like, I guess, the storytelling process through art. Because I think you said like so much of it for you is telling that story. So how do you tell that story through what you do? How does the color play into that storytelling for you?
Well, like I said, I mean, as Newfoundlanders, I feel that we're really vibrant, colorful people, and I want to portray that. So I use a lot of bright colors. I go foraging a lot. So, like in the summertime, I do a lot of dried flowers and leaves and things like that. I try to get as much bright colors as I can in my work to convey that emotion of happiness and just like joy, and as opposed to like a somber approach to things. But and then when I dye my own wools and things, I'll use those flowers to put into my pictures and stuff like that.
So I guess in that way, like kind of the places that the colors come from kind of contribute to that story then. Cause
Oh,
you're
yeah.
mentioning,
Yeah.
earlier, like using blueberry colors. And,
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if like if I'm out blueberry picking and I'm there near the water and I'm going to do that type of imagery, well then I'll actually pick the blueberries from that area. You know, so it just makes it a whole process.
Yeah.
So I'll use the blueberries from that to do the or I'll take the lichen that I have and I'll boil that and I'll mix that with the wool to do like a seascape or something like that. Depending on the area, the mood that I'm in and what I see, I'll try to use more than just what I have, you know.
And because it seems like place is a very present and important part of your work, so like tying that place again with like the physical pieces of that place, kind of contributes to that storytelling element of it.
I like to use a lot of humor in a lot of the stuff I do. I mean, that's the big thing about Newfoundland. We're a bunch of comedians on a rock, really. I mean, like, who can live here? But us. I mean, we've gone through everything. And it's our sense of humor, you know, it's our steadfastness, it's our generosity, it's everything, you know. So, I mean, I'm so proud to be here and be a Newfoundlander that when I do any type of picture, I try to envelop, well, this is where I come from. This is what I believe in, and this is what I want you to see. Because it's not just a picture. I want you to see it and feel something and know something. A lot of my pictures that you can see are very simple in regards to, you can relate to it immediately. You know, like the fishermen or the puffins or anything like that. So you can imagine, especially if you're from here, you'll be like, oh yes, well, who doesn't know someone that's not in the fishing industry? Who doesn't know about puffins, you know? I did a picture, it's going to choke me up. I did a picture of Boyne Park and a great big oak tree. And I did a picture of, at the park bench that's down there by the ducks, of a young man with an old woman. And he had his arm around the old woman with the cane. And this man came up and literally, and I can see them, I'm at the table and we're kind of eyesight and everything like that. And he started to cry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's going to make me emotional. He started to cry, and it was just like, okay, what do I do? So that, like, I've never had anyone, like, get emotional before, and I didn't understand. Anyway, so he got led from the table, and this woman came back, and she goes, I just want to let you know that his mother and him, she got Alzheimer's, and they used to go down to Boyne Park all the time. They used to go down and sit on the bench and look at birds. She had passed that year. I've never connected that way. Like, I didn't expect, you know, I don't want you to cry, I want you to take it and be happy, you know, that type of thing. But that connection to someone, I felt it was like, okay, like this is the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
That this did this to you, but in a good way, right? So the whole thing is about, when you see something that I do, I want you to feel something, not so much negative, you know, but be able to connect to that. I don't need to explain it to you. You know, I don't like art personally that it needs to be explained. I want you to look at it, understand it immediately, and know the story behind it. There's a picture, there's imagery, there's you can easily relate to it, you know, and that's the whole thing I want to get across, especially people who don't live in Newfoundland. The idea, well, this is what our culture is like, you know, this is who we are, and to be proud of it and to show it in color.
You mentioned too, like, you know, you heard a lot of storytelling growing up and how much the storytelling was a part for you. So how does that, I guess, like, how does that storytelling element, how is it different from what you do with your art, and how is it the same?
Well, like, I remember just stories that you hear when you're young from your grandparents or the older folks that are around. A lot of people who at that time didn't live in St. John's, they were always, we call around the bay as of such, but in their salt box houses and things like that. A lot of people had to move into town for work and things. And way back when, of course, it was a different time. I mean, you're lucky to have 2 bedrooms. It was all about the one house and the animals that you had and the big ride, you know, from there to town and things like that. So my grandmother used to hang her laundry all the time, and she used to talk about her house out in Freshwater. And I used to help her with her laundry and stuff, being 4 and 5 and stuff like that. And so the whole idea is that I have a picture there that I did of a salt box house with the grandmother and the grandchild, like putting up their laundry and the wind and the icebergs and things like that. So it's all about that type of memory. I mean, that's not something my daughter or my grandchildren will possibly see, but it's how I grew up. So I want to keep that kind of tradition alive. Like, this is how people still live. This is part of their life. You know, this is you're part of the earth itself. You're part of the sea. You're part of your landscape. Your whole surroundings. You know, and this is another way of living, and this is where we came from. So this is important to show. So the whole idea is that I don't want to stick in the standard of just using strips. So it's just like I use feathers and glitter and rocks and whatever I get my hands on. You know, and I want to teach people, like, think outside the box. If you want to do a sky purple or yellow and orange, go for it. Don't think it has to be blue, because that's what you were taught in elementary school or whatever. I want people to use their imagination, you know?
And so one of the things you mentioned earlier that I don't know if we talked about yet is less about art being something that you do and more being something that you are.
Well, I've always been an artist. That's how I think. I think every child is an artist. I mean, you got your scribblers, your painters, your scribblers on walls, you know, whatever. I remember being really, really little and going still to the Anna Templeton Centre, because they've been around like forever, doing watercolor classes and macrame and making cups and just all that process. My stepfather was a painter and a musician. So, and then I started listening to classical music. And it just went from one thing to the other. When I was in high school, I did advanced art. And then that went from that to I did voice lessons and piano lessons and violin lessons. And there's always been like a creative side that I wanted to explore. And when I say I've always been an artist, I have in one form or the other. Because just that side of me that just wanted to create and to experience and just to understand that there's more than just, you know, what you see. And if you want something, you have to go out and really, to understand it, experiment. And that's the whole thing that I love about art, is the experimentation part of it. Right? So that's why instead of just doing the typical rug hooking, I like to do just about anything and everything in regards to it, because I want to experiment. Because if you don't try, then you're never going to know. And I think that if you don't do that as an artist, you're stifling yourself. So I mean, if you're just going to do the same thing, the one thing forever, I can't see the creative, and that's just for me. I can't see the creative process of growth. And as you're an artist, you have to grow, you have to try, you have to do different things. So that's what. And now I'm trying stuff with plaster that I've never done. That's a complete disaster. But I mean, I'm still gonna, you know, you're not. And I welcome failure. I do, because it can lead to something else, right? That you never ever expected. And if I gave up, I would never be rug cooking today. If I did the traditional way that didn't suit me, then I would never have gone this way. And I don't know what the past 15 years of my life would have been like, because like I said, it is all consuming, but in a way that I welcome it, right? Because it's how I express myself and how I involve. Art for me is not like something that I do. It's not like a hobby. Like, I feel like it's innate in me. I have to create something. Like, if I don't create, it's just like, oh my God, like I just feel so bound up. I have to let it out. We do it because, or I do it because it's such a passion, you know. And, you know, if I can be accomplished in it, excellent. But it's still not something I'm ever going to stop.
Yeah.
You know, even if I'm told to stop, if I develop arthritis in both my wrists, I will use my feet. You know, because I know that I will never, ever, ever, ever stop.